Your Honor, my father has been denied effective counsel by a firm that has already bought the prosecution. Under the doctrine of In Loco Parentis and my petition for special legal standing, I am not just his daughter. I'm my dad's lawyer. If you're ready to enjoy this story, I humbly request you like and click subscribe. Also let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as amazing and heartwarming as this one. And you don't want to miss it. The oak-paneled walls of Courtroom 7B had witnessed thousands of verdicts, but nothing could have prepared the assembled lawyers, journalists, and spectators for what was about to unfold on this gray Tuesday morning. Judge Maxwell Sterling sat elevated behind his bench like a king surveying his domain, his silver hair immaculately combed, his robes pressed to perfection. Below him, Samuel Miller, a man whose 62 years showed in every weathered line of his face, sat hunched at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit that seemed to swallow his frame. His hands, scarred and calloused from decades of hard labor, trembled slightly as they rested on the table. Mr. Miller, Judge Sterling's voice carried the weight of finality. Given the severity of these charges, theft of corporate trade secrets, industrial espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, the prosecution has requested bail be set at $5 million. Does the defense have anything to add before I? Your Honor, I object. The voice was clear, young, and absolutely fearless. Every head in the courtroom turned. Standing in the gallery was a 15-year-old girl in a blazer that was clearly 2 sizes too large, probably purchased from a thrift store. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she clutched a stack of legal documents against her chest like a shield. Judge Sterling's face cycled through confusion, then amusement, then irritation. Young lady, this is not a field trip. If you're here with a school group, please. I'm here to represent the defendant. Elena Miller walked forward with steady steps, pushing through the low gate that separated the gallery from the legal proceedings. Under State Judicial Code Section 14-2-307, subsection C, a defendant denied effective counsel by systemic conflict of interest may petition the court for alternative representation. I'm filing a motion for special legal standing. The courtroom erupted. Lawyers whispered urgently to each other. A journalist in the back row started typing frantically on her phone. The prosecution table, occupied by 3 attorneys in suits worth more than Sam's annual salary, looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Judge Sterling slammed his gavel. Order. Young lady, I don't know what kind of stunt. It's not a stunt, Your Honor. Elena placed her documents on the defense table and looked directly at the judge. Her voice didn't waver. My father has been assigned a public defender who worked at Thorne and Associates for 6 years. That's the same firm accusing my father of theft. The same firm whose CEO is sitting in this courtroom right now, demanding my father's head. That's not a conflict of interest, that's a conspiracy. In the front row of the gallery, Julian Thorne straightened in his seat. At 58, he looked like he'd been carved from marble and polished with old money. His navy suit probably cost more than Sam's car. Next to him, his ex-wife Camille Vance, all sharp cheekbones and sharper ambition, leaned forward with sudden predatory interest. Judge Sterling's amusement had completely evaporated. Miss Miller, is it? I appreciate your concern for your father, but the law doesn't allow children to. The law allows for emergency intervention when a defendant's constitutional rights are being violated. Elena opened her folder, pulling out a document with sticky notes marking specific pages. Rathburn v. Kentucky, 1982. Marshall v. Delaware, 1997. Chen v. State of New York, 2019. In all 3 cases, non-traditional counsel was permitted when the court acknowledged systemic barriers to fair representation. Your Honor, my father is a 62-year-old janitor accused by his billionaire employers. Every lawyer in this city is either employed by them, afraid of them, or hoping to be hired by them someday. He has no effective counsel. Under the doctrine of in loco parentis, in place of a parent, I'm not just his daughter. She straightened her thrifted blazer and looked Judge Sterling dead in the eye. I'm my father's lawyer. The silence that followed was absolute. The hero's scars. 15 years earlier. The neighborhood of Riverside Heights wasn't the kind of place that made the news for good reasons. Working-class families lived in houses that had seen better decades, where the American dream was less a promise and more a persistent rumor. But on the night of October 3rd, it made headlines for the worst reason possible. Fire. The Morales house, a modest two-story structure with fading blue paint, was already halfway consumed when the first engine arrived. Flames licked out of the second-floor windows like demonic tongues, and thick black smoke poured into the autumn sky. Samuel Miller was first on the scene. At 47, Sam was in his prime as a firefighter. 23 years of service, countless commendations, a man who ran toward danger while others ran away. He'd seen structure fires before, but something about this one felt wrong. The intensity was too focused, too complete. It wasn't spreading, it was devouring. We've got reports of a family inside. Captain Torres shouted over the roar of the flames. Parents and an infant. Sam didn't hesitate. He'd never hesitated. He went through the front door with his partner Rodriguez, both of them equipped with full gear and breathing apparatus. The heat was overwhelming even with protection. The fire had started in multiple locations, a detail that would later prove significant, though no one was thinking about arson as the floor began to buckle beneath their feet. Upstairs. Rodriguez pointed to the staircase, but even as he did, a support beam gave way with a groan that sounded almost human. The stairs collapsed into themselves, cutting off any route to the second floor. Sam heard it then. Through the mechanical wheeze of his respirator, through the consuming roar of the fire, through the blood pounding in his ears, a baby crying. There's no way up. Rodriguez grabbed his arm. Sam, we need to evacuate. But Sam was already moving. There was a window ground floor, leading to what looked like a laundry room. He could see the flames hadn't reached it yet. He swung his axe, shattering the glass, and crawled through. The room was full of smoke, but the fire hadn't claimed it. Yet. Sam swept his light across the space and found what he was looking for, a door to the garage, and in the corner of that garage, a service ladder. His lungs were burning despite the mask. The heat was making the edges of his vision blur. But that baby was still crying, and that meant there was still time. Sam climbed. The second floor was hell. Literally. Flames on all sides, the ceiling starting to cave in, the floor unstable beneath his boots. But in the master bedroom, somehow still protected by a heavy oak door, he found her. A tiny girl, 4 years old, lying in a portable crib. She was screaming, her face red, her little fists shaking with terror. The smoke hadn't reached her yet, but it would in seconds. Sam scooped her up, tucking her inside his coat against his chest. He could feel her tiny heart hammering like a hummingbird's. Then the floor gave way. Sam fell 10 feet through burning timber and drywall, his body instinctively curling around the infant in his arms. He felt his shoulder dislocate, felt something in his leg snap, felt the searing agony of flames catching his gear. But he kept moving. Rodriguez found him crawling out of the wreckage, his left side a mess of burns and trauma, his gear scorched beyond recognition. But in his arms, protected by his body, the baby was alive. The parents weren't. Marcus and Sofia Morales, both 29 years old, had been overcome by smoke in their bedroom before the fire fully erupted. The medical examiner would later note the unusual amount of sedatives in their bloodstream, but that detail would be buried in the chaos of the investigation. At the hospital, Sam learned the extent of his injuries. Second- and third-degree burns across 30% of his body. A shattered femur. Nerve damage in his left hand. His firefighting career was over. At 47, he was being medically retired with a partial pension that would barely cover rent. But when they brought the child to him, cleaned up, checked out, miraculously unharmed, and he held her hand with his functioning arm, Sam Miller knew he'd made the right choice. "She has no family," the social worker explained quietly. The Morales were both only children. No grandparents, no aunts or uncles. "She'll go into the foster system unless—" "Unless what?" Sam asked. "Unless someone steps forward. Someone who saved her life." The adoption process took 6 months. 6 months of paperwork, interviews, home visits, and bureaucratic nightmares. Sam used every cent of his settlement to make it happen. He calls her Elena, bright light, because that's what she'd been in the darkness of that burning house. And he promised her, even though she was too young to understand, that he would give her a life worth saving. Present day, 3 months before the arrest. To most employees at Thorne and Associates, Samuel Miller was invisible. He arrived at 6 p.m. when the lawyers were beginning to pack up their briefcases, and he left at 2 a.m. when even the most ambitious associates had finally gone home. He pushed his cart through marble hallways, emptying trash bins, mopping floors, cleaning conference rooms where deals worth millions had been struck hours before. The firm occupied floors 15 through 20 of the Meridian Tower in downtown Manhattan. It was a cathedral to corporate law, glass, steel, and carefully curated art that screamed success. The kind of place where junior partners drove Teslas and senior partners had summer homes in the Hamptons. Sam Miller drove a 2003 Honda Civic with 240,000 miles on it. But he didn't complain. The job paid $18 an hour plus health insurance, and after years of medical bills from his injuries, that insurance was worth its weight in gold. More importantly, the job allowed Elena to come with him. "Dad, did you know that in Morrison versus United Chemical, the plaintiff's entire case hinged on a single misplaced comma in the contract?" Elena sat cross-legged on the floor of File Room 3, books and case files spread across her lap, her homework forgotten beside her. She was 14 years old in this memory, already showing signs of the brilliance that would define her. While other kids her age were watching YouTube or playing video games, Elena was reading legal briefs like they were adventure novels. "That's so." Sam smiled as he wiped down the conference table. His daughter had a way of making even the most boring legal precedent sound like a treasure hunt. The comma changed the entire interpretation of liability. Elena's eyes shone with excitement. The defense argued it was a typo, but the plaintiff's attorney proved it was in the original document, notarized and signed. They won $4.7 million because of a comma, Dad. A comma. Sam chuckled. "Guess I better watch my punctuation." The truth was, Elena's obsession with law had started years ago. It began innocently enough. She'd grown curious about Sam's case files from the fire, wanting to understand what had happened to her biological parents. Sam had explained, in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes accidents happened and sometimes people made mistakes. But Elena was too smart to accept simple answers. At age 9, she'd found the actual incident report in Sam's filing cabinet. She'd read it cover to cover, confused by the technical language. So she'd gone to the library, first the public one, then the one at Sam's workplace when she started accompanying him on his evening shifts. Thorne and Associates had a legal library that would make most law schools jealous. 20,000 volumes, digital access to every major legal database, archives going back to the firm's founding in 1952. It was supposed to be for attorneys only. But who was going to stop the janitor's kid from reading while she waited for her dad? At first, the lawyers who worked late barely noticed her. Then they started noticing and found it amusing, a child trying to understand legal theory. A few of the younger associates even helped her, explaining concepts she couldn't grasp, pointing her toward landmark cases. By age 13, Elena had read more case law than most first-year law students. By 14, she was spotting errors in briefs left in conference rooms. By 15, she was a ghost in the library, invisible to everyone who mattered, but seeing everything. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Elena closed the case file, her expression suddenly serious. "Anything, kiddo." "Why did you become a firefighter?" Sam paused in his cleaning. It wasn't a question Elena had asked before, not directly. "I guess. I wanted to help people." Sounds simple, but that's really all it was. "Did you ever regret it? I mean, after?" She gestured vaguely at his left side, where the worst of the burn scars were hidden beneath his uniform. Sam set down his spray bottle and sat on the edge of the conference table. "Elena, I pulled you out of that fire. I got hurt, yeah. Lost my career, yeah. But I got you. That's not something I regret. That's the best thing I ever did." Elena's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away quickly. She hated crying. "Promise me something." "What's that?" "Promise me that if something bad happens, you'll let me help. Don't try to protect me from everything. I'm not a little kid anymore." Sam pulled her into a hug, feeling her tension slowly release. "I promise, kiddo. We're a team, right?" "Right." Neither of them knew how soon that promise would be tested. 2 months before the arrest, Julian Thorne's office occupied the entire 20th floor of the Meridian Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, a constant reminder of his position above the masses. His desk, handcrafted mahogany, worth more than most people's cars, held 3 monitors displaying real-time market data, pending case summaries, and a live feed of CNBC with the sound muted. He was on the phone when Camille Vance walked in without knocking. "I'll call you back," Julian said tersely, ending the call. "You know, Camille, most people make appointments. Most people aren't about to save your ass." Camille crossed the office with the confidence of someone who'd spent 8 years as Julian's wife and 3 years as his most dangerous adversary. She was a named partner at a rival firm now, but they still occasionally worked together when mutual benefit outweighed mutual hatred. She dropped a folder on his desk. "The SEC is digging into the Hartley merger." Julian's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his pen. "The Hartley merger was clean. We closed that deal 18 months ago. The deal was clean. Your books weren't." Camille opened the folder, revealing financial documents with certain figures highlighted in yellow. "You embezzled $12 million through that merger, Julian. You routed it through shell companies, offshore accounts, and dummy transactions. Very sophisticated. Very illegal." That's quite an accusation from someone who signed off on half those transfers. Camille's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Which is exactly why we need to deal with this before the SEC finds what I found. We need a scapegoat." Julian leaned back in his chair, studying his ex-wife with the calculating gaze that had made him a formidable attorney. "You have someone in mind." "Samuel Miller." Julian blinked. "Once. The janitor?" "The janitor with building access, computer access, and absolutely no one who would believe his innocence." Camille pulled out another document, personnel files, security logs, email records. "We plant the Hartley files on his workstation. We create a digital trail showing him accessing secure servers after hours. We put together a narrative: desperate man disabled, struggling to provide for his daughter, gets approached by Hartley's competitors with an offer he can't refuse. He steals the files, sells them for 7 figures, and thinks he's gotten away with it. Hartley will back the story. Julian asked. Hartley will do whatever we tell them to do. They're in deep with their own regulatory issues. If we offer them an external threat to rally against, they'll take it in a heartbeat. Plus, we can prove actual damages. Hartley lost the Taiwan contract 6 months after our merger. We'll say Miller's leak caused that. Julian was quiet for a long moment, considering. Miller saved a child from a fire. He's got a sympathetic backstory. He's also a 62-year-old janitor with a 9th-grade education and no resources. He can't afford real legal representation, and his heroic backstory will sound like a desperate defense when we're done with him. Camille leaned forward. Julian, the SEC is 3 months away from finding those discrepancies. We need to move now. We frame Miller, we come out as the victims of corporate espionage, and the whole investigation shifts focus. By the time anyone realizes what really happened, we'll have had time to clean up the rest of the evidence. Julian stared at the Manhattan skyline, thinking, when do we start? We already have. Camille pulled out a USB drive. This contains a full replica of the Hartley files, modified to include Miller's digital fingerprints. I had one of my IT contractors build it, untraceable back to us. All you need to do is have Miller's workstation serviced next week. The tech plugs this in, runs the script, and within minutes Miller's computer will show months of unauthorized access to secure files. And the money trail? Offshore account in the Caymans, opened 2 years ago with Miller's personal information. We'll seed it with deposits from a shell company linked to Hartley's competitors. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. By the time we're done, it'll look like Miller's been planning this for years. Julian took the USB drive, holding it up to the light as if he could see the destruction contained within. What about collateral damage? You mean his daughter? Camille's expression didn't change. She's 15, Julian. Child Services will place her in foster care or with a relative. It's not ideal, but it's not our problem. We're talking about prison time versus a minor inconvenience for a teenager. You always were ruthless. That's why you married me. Camille stood, smoothing her designer skirt. And it's why you need me now. Do we have an agreement? Julian set down the USB drive and extended his hand. We have an agreement. They shook, 2 sharks circling the same prey, temporarily united by mutual survival instinct. Neither of them knew that the teenager they'd so casually dismissed had been in the building's law library at that exact moment, reading case files on corporate fraud. Neither of them knew she'd made copies of those files to study at home. Neither of them knew they'd just made the worst mistake of their professional lives. The night everything changed. The banging on the door came at 11:47 p.m. Sam and Elena lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, the kind of place where the radiator clanged like a prisoner trying to escape and the neighbors' arguments provided ambient noise. But it was theirs, paid for by Sam's honest work, decorated with Elena's school achievements and Sam's firehouse photos from better days. Elena was at the kitchen table, buried in her biology homework, when the pounding started. FBI. Open up. Sam's face went white. He looked at Elena, then at the door, then back at Elena. Stay here. But Elena was already on her feet, her legal instincts screaming that something was very wrong. She followed her father to the door, arriving just as Sam opened it to reveal 6 federal agents in tactical gear, weapons drawn. Samuel Miller. The lead agent, badge identifying him as Special Agent Marcus Chun, kept his weapon pointed at the floor but ready. "You're under arrest for theft of trade secrets, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit industrial espionage." "What?" "There must be," Sam started, but Agent Chun was already reading him his Miranda rights while two other agents moved past him into the apartment. "Dad." Elena's voice cracked. "Dad, what's happening?" "I don't know, baby." "I don't." Sam's hands were being cuffed behind his back. He winced as the metal closed around his damaged wrist. "Elena, Cole." "Sir, you have the right to remain silent," Agent Chun interrupted. "I'd suggest you use it." The other agents were tearing through the apartment now. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered, their laptops seized from the kitchen counter. One agent emerged from Sam's bedroom holding a stack of files, work documents Sam had brought home to review, completely innocuous cleaning schedules and supply inventories. "Found documentation," the agent called out. Those are cleaning schedules." Sam protested. "This is a mistake." "Mr. Miller, we have evidence of unauthorized access to Thorne and Associates secure servers from your work terminal. We have financial records showing deposits to an offshore account in your name. We have correspondence with representatives from Hartley Chemical's competitors." Agent Chen's voice was professional, almost sympathetic. "Sir, this is not a mistake." Elena felt the world tilting beneath her. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Her father couldn't even figure out Netflix without her help. There was no way he was some sophisticated corporate spy. "Agent Chun," Elena stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "My father is innocent. This is..." "Sweetie, I understand you're scared." Agent Chen's expression softened slightly. "We've already contacted Child Services. Someone will be here shortly to..." "No." The word came out sharper than Elena intended. "You're not taking him, and I'm not going anywhere." "Elena, listen to the agent." Sam's voice was thick with emotion. "I need you to cooperate, okay? I need you to be safe." "Dad, you promised." Elena's eyes blazed. "You promised if something bad happened, you'd let me help." The agents were escorting Sam toward the door now. He looked back at his daughter, this brilliant, fierce 15-year-old who'd grown from the tiny baby he'd pulled from the flames into someone who made him proud every single day. "Elena, I love you. I need you to remember that, okay? Whatever happens, I love you, and I didn't do this." "I know you didn't." Elena was running after them now, following them down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the parking lot where 3 black SUVs waited. "I know you didn't, and I'm going to prove it." They pushed Sam into the back of one of the vehicles. Through the window, his eyes met Elena's one last time. She pressed her hand against the glass. "I'm my dad's lawyer," she whispered, though no one could hear her. "I'm going to save you." The SUVs pulled away, red and blue lights reflecting off the surrounding buildings. Elena stood in the parking lot in her pajamas and slippers, her mind already racing. She thought about every case file she'd ever read, every legal principle she'd memorized, every precedent she'd studied during those long nights in Thorne and Associates' library. By the time the Child Services representative arrived 20 minutes later, Elena had a plan. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, she was already putting it into motion. Judge Maxwell Sterling had presided over thousands of cases in his 30-year career. He'd seen corporate fraud, organized crime, political corruption, and everything in between. He prided himself on running an efficient courtroom, free from theatrics and emotional manipulation. But he'd never seen anything quite like Elena Miller. After her dramatic entrance and declaration, the courtroom had descended into chaos. It took Sterling 5 minutes and repeated gavel strikes to restore order. Now, with the gallery finally quiet, he looked down at the teenage girl standing at the defense table with a mixture of skepticism and grudging interest. "Miss Miller," he began carefully, "I admire your determination. But surely you understand that the practice of law requires years of education, passing the bar exam, and—" "The practice of law requires those things, Your Honor. But the representation of a defendant in a criminal trial has different requirements." Elena's voice was steady, confident. She'd rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. Under New York Judiciary Law Section 478, a person who is not an attorney may appear on their own behalf or, and this is the critical part, on behalf of another person in circumstances where traditional representation is unavailable or compromised. That statute refers to civil cases, not criminal trials, the lead prosecutor interjected. His name was Warren Stiles, and he'd worked at Thorne and Associates for 8 years before taking a position at the DA's office. Elena had researched him thoroughly. "Actually, Mr. Stiles, if you'd read the 2019 amendment carefully, you'd know the statute now includes provisions for criminal representation in extraordinary circumstances." Elena pulled out a highlighted document. The New York State Legislature expanded it following the Chin decision, specifically to address situations where systemic conflicts of interest compromise a defendant's Sixth Amendment rights. Judge Sterling held out his hand. "Let me see that." Elena approached the bench and handed up the document. She watched the judge's eyes move across the page, saw the moment he realized she was right. "This is surprisingly well-researched," Sterling admitted. He looked at the prosecution table. "Mr. Stiles, are you aware of this amendment?" Stiles looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "Your Honor, regardless of statutory technicalities, the court has a responsibility to ensure competent representation. Miss Miller is 15 years old. She has no legal training, no." "I have no formal legal training," Elena interrupted. "But I've spent the last 6 years studying in Thorne and Associates' legal library while my father worked night shifts. I've read over 3,000 case files. I've studied every major criminal law precedent from the past 50 years. I can cite constitutional law, rules of evidence, and criminal procedure. Can you honestly tell this court that the overworked public defender who met my father for 20 minutes before this hearing can do better?" She turned to face Judge Sterling directly. "Your Honor, my father is accused of crimes he didn't commit. The evidence against him was fabricated. The witnesses against him are compromised. And every attorney in this city is either afraid of Thorne and Associates or wants to work for them. I'm the only person in this courtroom who has nothing to lose and everything to fight for. I'm the only person who will give my father real representation." Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Sam. "Mr. Miller, do you consent to your daughter's representation?" Sam, who'd been sitting in stunned silence, found his voice. "Your Honor, she's 15. I'm aware of her age, Mr. Miller. I'm asking if you consent." Sam looked at Elena. His brilliant, brave, impossible daughter. The little girl he'd pulled from the flames had grown into someone extraordinary. Someone who was willing to stand up to the entire legal system to protect him. "Yes," Sam said quietly. "Yes, I consent." "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." Stiles protested. The prosecution objects strenuously. "Your objection is noted, Mr. Stiles." Judge Sterling's expression was unreadable. "However, Miss Miller has correctly cited the relevant statute, and the defendant has consented to her representation. I'm going to allow this motion, provisionally." "Provisionally?" Elena asked. "You have 1 week to demonstrate that you can provide competent representation." If at any point I determine that you're in over your head, or that Mr. Miller's defense is being compromised, I will appoint experienced counsel. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Your Honor. Good. Now, regarding bail. Your Honor, I'd like to request that my father be released on his own recognizance, Elena interjected. He has no criminal record, deep ties to the community, and no means to flee. The prosecution's request for $5 million bail is punitive and excessive. Stiles jumped up. The defendant is accused of stealing and selling trade secrets worth over $50 million. He potentially has access to 7 figures in. Allegedly, Elena cut him off. He allegedly has access to that money. Money the prosecution hasn't actually proven exists. Meanwhile, my father lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, drives a 20-year-old Honda, and his bank account has $3,247 in it. Does that sound like someone sitting on a fortune? Judge Sterling looked at the prosecution table. Mr. Stiles, has your office located these supposed millions? Stiles hesitated. The accounts are offshore, Your Honor. These things take time to. That's not what I asked. Have you located them or not? Not yet, but. Then Miss Miller makes a fair point. Bail is set at $50,000, and Mr. Miller will be released pending trial with GPS monitoring. Sterling banged his gavel. We'll reconvene in 1 week for preliminary hearings. Miss Miller, use that time wisely. Thank you, Your Honor. As the courtroom began to empty, Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Julian Thorne standing behind her, his expression carefully neutral. That was quite a performance, he said smoothly. Very creative. It wasn't a performance, Mr. Thorne. It was the law. Of course. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I just hope you understand what you're up against. The resources, the expertise, the evidence. This isn't a game, Miss Miller. Elena met his gaze without flinching. No, it's not a game. It's my father's life. And I'm going to save it. She turned away, ending the conversation, and went to her father. Sam was being processed for release, the GPS monitor being fitted to his ankle. When he saw Elena, his eyes filled with tears. Baby girl, what did you just do? I told you, Dad. I'm your lawyer. And we're going to win this. In the gallery, unnoticed by most, Camille Vance watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. She pulled out her phone and sent a single text to Julian, "We have a problem." Elena didn't sleep that night. Instead, she spread every document the prosecution had filed across their small kitchen table, their living room floor, even parts of the bathroom counter. Police reports, financial records, digital forensics analyses, witness statements. 3 boxes worth of evidence that supposedly proved Sam Miller was a corporate spy. Sam watched from the couch, his ankle monitor blinking rhythmically. Elena, you should get some rest. You have school tomorrow. I'm not going to school tomorrow. Elena was hunched over a laptop she'd borrowed from a sympathetic neighbor, cross-referencing timestamps. I'm studying this case. And Dad, I've already found something. What? Elena held up a forensic report. The prosecution claims you accessed Thorne and Associates' secure server on 17 different occasions between March and June, downloading confidential Hartley chemical files. Each access is logged with your employee ID and occurred during your night shifts. I didn't. I know you didn't. Because look at these dates. She pointed to her laptop screen, where she'd pulled up Sam's work schedules. March 15th, the first alleged breach, you were out sick. You have a doctor's note from Queen's Memorial Emergency Room, kidney stones. You weren't even in the building. Sam leaned forward. Are you sure? Completely sure. April 3rd, another alleged breach. You were attending mandatory safety training in conference room 8B. There's video footage and sign-in sheets. April 22nd, you left work 2 hours early because I had a school play. The attendance record puts us both at Hamilton High School at the exact time these files were supposedly accessed. So someone used my login, Sam said slowly. Someone who knew my schedule. Not just someone. Someone with administrative access to override security logs. Elena was already pulling up another document. Look at this, the Digital Forensics Report. It claims your workstation shows months of deleted browser history, encrypted file transfers, and use of VPN software to mask your location. Dad, your workstation is a 5-year-old Dell that barely runs Windows 10. You told me yourself it takes 10 minutes just to boot up. That's right. So how were you allegedly running sophisticated encryption software, multiple VPN connections, and coordinating file transfers to offshore servers, all while this computer was struggling to load email? Elena's eyes blazed with righteous anger. This isn't just wrong, Dad. It's sloppy. They created fake evidence, but they didn't bother to make it believable. Sam stood up, moving to the table where Elena had organized the documents. For the first time since his arrest, hope flickered in his chest. Can you prove that in court? I need to prove more than that. I need to prove who actually did it. Elena pulled out another set of documents, this time, personnel files she'd secretly photographed months ago during her time in Thorne and Associates' library. The thing about working in a law firm is that lawyers document everything, including their own staff. She spread out the files. These are the administrative logs from Thorne and Associates' IT department. Every time someone resets a password, accesses the server remotely, or overrides security protocols, it gets logged. The logs are supposed to be confidential, but the firm keeps physical copies in the archives. Archives I've been organizing for 3 years as part of my help dad at work routine. Elena, you could get in trouble for. I'm already in trouble, Dad. We both are. But look at this. She pointed to a specific entry. March 15th, the day of the first alleged breach. Someone with administrative credentials reset your password at 2:47 a.m. The admin user was. She traced her finger across the page. C. Vance. Camille Vance, Sam breathed. Mr. Thorne's ex-wife. Who also happens to be a named partner at a rival firm and has a history of working with Thorne on special projects. Elena was already moving to another document. And look at the financial records. The prosecution claims you opened an offshore account in the Caymans 2 years ago. But the account opening documents? They were notarized by a firm in Manhattan, a firm that specializes in corporate tax shelters. How does that help us? Because the notary who signed off on your supposed account is named Rebecca Chen. And guess who Rebecca Chen's biggest client is? Elena held up another document with a triumphant expression. Thorne and Associates. She's their go-to notary for sensitive financial transactions. Sam stared at his daughter with something close to awe. How did you figure all this out? I've been reading these files since I was 9, Dad. I know how these people work. I know their systems, their procedures, their habits. They think I'm invisible, just the janitor's kid, but I see everything. Elena's expression hardened. And now I'm going to use everything I know to destroy their case. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what we need to do. First, I'm filing a motion to compel the prosecution to produce all administrative logs from Thorne and Associates' IT systems. They'll fight it, but Judge Sterling will have to admit them. They're directly relevant to your defense. What else? Second, I'm subpoenaing Camille Vance's work records from that night. If she was the one who reset your password, there will be other evidence, security camera footage, building access logs, maybe even email correspondence. Third, I'm bringing in an expert witness. We can't afford an expert witness, Sam said quietly. We don't need to. Remember Professor Williams from Columbia Law? The one who used to work late at Thorne and Associates and always let me ask him questions about digital forensics? He owes me a favor. Well, technically he owes you. I helped him find his wedding ring when he dropped it down a floor drain last year. He said if we ever needed anything. Elena. Sam's voice caught in his throat. How did I raise such an incredible kid? You didn't raise me, Dad. You saved me. And now I'm returning the favor. She turned back to her documents, but Sam pulled her into a hug, careful of his injured shoulder, but tight enough to convey everything he couldn't put into words. We're going to win this, Elena whispered. I promise you, we're going to win. Outside their apartment window, the city hummed with nighttime energy. In a penthouse across town, Julian Thorne was receiving an urgent call from his IT director about missing administrative logs. And in her own apartment, Camille Vance was staring at a subpoena that had just been hand-delivered by a very determined teenage process server. The game was changing, and the players were starting to realize they might have underestimated their opponent. The preliminary hearing arrived with the cold efficiency of a guillotine. Courtroom 7B was packed. News of the teenage lawyer had spread through legal circles like wildfire. Drawing reporters, curious attorneys, and even a few law students who'd skipped class to witness history in the making. Elena arrived early, wearing the same thrifted blazer she'd worn to the arraignment, now paired with a white blouse and black pants she'd borrowed from a friend. Her materials were organized in banker's boxes she'd labeled herself, every document tagged with sticky notes and cross-referenced. The prosecution table, by contrast, looked like a war room. Warren Stiles had brought 2 additional attorneys, both senior prosecutors with decades of experience. Behind them, in the first row of the gallery, sat Julian Thorne and his legal team, 5 attorneys in suits that collectively cost more than Sam's annual salary. Judge Sterling entered, and everyone rose. We're here for the preliminary hearing in the People v. Samuel Miller. Miss Miller, you're representing the defendant. Yes, Your Honor. Elena's voice was steady. Very well. Mr. Stiles, call your first witness. The people call Special Agent Frederick Zipper to the stand. Agent Zipper took his oath and settled into the witness chair. Stiles led him through the basics, his credentials, his role in the investigation, the evidence that led to Sam's arrest. It was textbook prosecution, building a narrative brick by brick. Agent Zipper, can you describe the evidence you found on Mr. Miller's work computer? Yes. We found detailed access logs showing unauthorized entry into secure servers over a 4-month period. We found downloaded files containing proprietary Hartley chemical formulations. We found evidence of encrypted communication with known corporate intelligence operatives. And in your professional opinion, does this evidence indicate criminal activity? Absolutely. This is a clear pattern of corporate espionage. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Sterling looked at Elena. Your witness, Miss Miller. Elena stood, picking up a single manila folder. She approached Agent Chun with the kind of calm confidence that came from knowing she was right. Agent Zipper, you testified that my father's computer showed detailed access logs of unauthorized server entry. Do you have those logs with you? They're in the evidence files, yes. Could you identify them specifically? Elena opened her folder and pulled out a document. I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 7. Are these the logs you referenced? Agent Zipper glanced at the document. Yes. According to these logs, the first unauthorized access occurred on March 15 at 2:54 a.m. Is that correct? Yes. And you arrested my father because these logs showed his employee ID accessing secure files. Correct. That's one piece of evidence, yes. But these logs don't actually prove it was my father at the keyboard, do they? They just prove someone used his login credentials. Agent Zipper shifted slightly. Well, the credentials were password protected. The reasonable inference. I'm asking what the logs actually prove, Agent Zipper, not what you've inferred. Do these logs contain any biometric data? Fingerprint scans? Facial recognition? Anything that physically proves my father was the person accessing these files? No, but. So someone could have used my father's stolen credentials to access these files, couldn't they? Stiles jumped up. Objection, speculation. Your Honor, I'm establishing reasonable doubt, Elena countered. If the prosecution's entire case relies on login credentials, the jury needs to know whether those credentials could have been compromised. Overruled, Sterling said. Answer the question, Agent Zipper. Zipper looked uncomfortable. Technically, yes. If someone knew Mr. Miller's password, they could have used his credentials. Thank you. Elena pulled out another document. Agent Zipper, I'm now showing you what I've marked as Defense Exhibit A. This is my father's employee medical record from March 15th, showing he visited Queens Memorial Emergency Room at 11:42 p.m. on March 14th and wasn't discharged until 3:15 a.m. on March 15th. He was being treated for kidney stones, a condition documented by 3 different hospital staff members. She placed the document in front of him. So when these logs show someone accessing secure files using my father's credentials at 2:54 a.m. on March 15th, my father was actually in a hospital bed 8 miles away, hooked up to N4 and monitored by medical professionals. Do you have any evidence that refutes this alibi? The courtroom went silent. Agent Zipper looked at the document, then at Stiles, then back at Elena. We'll need to verify this with the hospital. Please do. In fact, I have similar alibis for 6 of the 17 alleged breaches. My father couldn't have committed these crimes because he wasn't physically present when they occurred. Elena's voice rose slightly, passion breaking through her professional demeanor. Agent Zipper, you arrested an innocent man based on fabricated evidence. The real question isn't whether my father committed these crimes, it's who framed him and why. Objection. Stiles was on his feet. Your Honor, counsel is testifying rather than questioning. Sustained. Miss Miller, ask questions, don't make speeches. Apologies, Your Honor. Elena turned back to Chun. Agent Zipper, did you investigate the possibility that someone else might have used my father's credentials? No. The evidence pointed to. Did you interview IT staff at Thorne and Associates about whether my father's password could have been reset or compromised? No. Did you examine security footage to verify my father was actually at his workstation during these alleged breaches? No. Did you do any investigation whatsoever beyond accepting what Thorne and Associates told you? Chen's jaw tightened. We conducted a thorough investigation based on the evidence provided. Evidence provided by the alleged victims who, as I'll demonstrate, have every reason to frame my father. Elena returned to her table. No further questions. As Agent Zipper left the stand, Elena could feel the energy in the courtroom shifting. Doubt had entered the equation. She glanced at the gallery and saw Julian Thorne's expression, still controlled, but with cracks forming around the edges. "Mr. Stiles," Judge Sterling said, "your next witness?" The people called Julian Thorne. This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. Julian Thorne rose from the gallery and made his way to the witness stand, every movement calculated for maximum authority. He was a man used to commanding rooms, to having his word accepted as law. Elena was going to shatter that authority piece by piece. Julian Thorne settled into the witness chair with the easy confidence of a man who'd testified dozens of times before. His suit was immaculate, his expression appropriately grave. Warren Stiles began with softball questions designed to establish Thorne's credibility and the severity of the theft. "Mr. Thorne, how long has Samuel Miller been employed at your firm?" "Approximately 7 years." "And during that time, did you have reason to trust him?" "Of course. We trusted all our employees. That's what makes this betrayal so devastating." Elena watched from the defense table, her fingers drumming a quiet rhythm on her legal pad. She'd spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment, cross-referencing dates, pulling records, building a case within a case. Stiles continued, "Can you describe the impact of this theft on your firm?" "Catastrophic. The Hartley chemical files contain proprietary information worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When that information was leaked to competitors, we lost clients, contracts, and our reputation was severely damaged. We estimate total damages in excess of $50 million. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Your witness, Miss Miller." Elena stood, picking up a thick folder. She approached slowly, deliberately, like a chess player who'd been planning her endgame for 7 moves. "Mr. Thorne, you testified that my father's theft caused catastrophic damage to your firm. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Yet Thorne and Associates reported record profits last quarter. How do you explain that?" Thorne's smile was patient, condescending. "We've recovered through diligent work and excellent client relationships. The damage was temporary but severe." "Interesting." Elena opened her folder. "I'm showing you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit F, your firm's financial disclosures for the past 3 years. According to these documents, Thorne and Associates' profits increased by 23% in the quarter immediately following the alleged theft. If my father's actions were so catastrophic, why did your firm's value increase? That's an oversimplification of complex market dynamics. It's a simple question, Mr. Thorne. Did your profits go up or down after the alleged theft?" "Up, but that doesn't mean." "Thank you." Elena pulled out another document. "Mr. Thorne, do you recognize this?" Thorne glanced at the paper. "It appears to be some kind of financial transfer." "It's a wire transfer from Thorne and Associates to a shell company called Meridian Holdings, dated March 10th, 5 days before the first alleged breach. The amount is $4 million. Can you explain this transfer?" Thorne's expression remained neutral, but Elena saw his hands tighten slightly on the armrests. "I'd have to review our records. We conduct hundreds of transactions." "I'm sure you do." Interestingly, Meridian Holdings is registered in the Cayman Islands and lists only one board member, a lawyer named Patricia Stokes. Do you know Ms. Stokes? The name sounds familiar, but... She's your personal attorney, Mr. Thorne. She handles your private financial matters, separate from firm business. So why is your firm transferring $4 million to a shell company managed by your personal lawyer? Stiles stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond the scope of..." "Your Honor, This goes directly to motive, Elena interrupted. If Mr. Thorne was embezzling from his own firm, he'd need a scapegoat when the discrepancies were discovered. My father became that scapegoat. Judge Sterling leaned forward, suddenly very interested. I'll allow it. Mr. Thorne, answer the question. Thorne's composure cracked slightly. I don't recall that specific transaction. I'd need to review. Let me help your memory. Elena pulled out more documents, creating a stack on the witness rail. March 10th, $4 million to Meridian Holdings. March 24th, $2.7 million to Pacific Ventures, another Cayman shell company. April 15th, $3.2 million to Apex International. Over 4 months, you transferred more than $12 million from Thorne & Associates to offshore accounts controlled by you and your ex-wife Camille Vance. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Stiles looked like he'd been struck. Julian Thorne's careful mask was completely gone now, replaced by barely concealed fury. These are legitimate business expenses. Business expenses? To shell companies with no employees, no offices, and no apparent business purpose except moving money offshore. Elena's voice cut through the noise. Mr. Thorne, you weren't the victim of corporate espionage. You were the perpetrator of corporate embezzlement. And when the SEC started investigating, you needed someone to blame. Someone powerless, someone no one would believe. You needed my father. That's a ridiculous accusation. Is it? Elena pulled out her final document, the one she'd been saving. Mr. Thorne, do you recognize this photograph? She held up an image, enlarged and mounted on foam board. It showed a fire truck, firefighters, and a crowd of onlookers. In the background, partially obscured but unmistakable, was a younger Julian Thorne standing next to a sedan. Where was this taken? Elena asked. Thorne stared at the image. I don't know. I can't tell from. This photograph was taken on October 3rd, 15 years ago, at 247 Riverside Heights. The night my biological parents died in a house fire. Elena's voice dropped, became quieter but somehow more powerful. This is a photo from the fire department's incident report, a report that was sealed because the fire was ruled accidental. But I've been studying that report since I was 9 years old, Mr. Thorne. And I've always wondered, why was a corporate attorney present at a residential fire in a working-class neighborhood at 11:30 p.m.? The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I wasn't, Thorne started. The car in the photo is a Mercedes S-Class, registered to Thorne & Associates. Security logs from your office show you left work at 10:47 p.m. that night. The fire started at 11:23 p.m., and you appeared on scene 12 minutes later. Not after the fire trucks arrived, before. How did you know about the fire, Mr. Thorne? Stiles was frantically whispering to his associates. Judge Sterling had gone pale. And Julian Thorne looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. Your Honor, I need a recess, Thorne began. My biological parents were Marcus and Sophia Morales, Elena continued, relentless now. Marcus worked as a financial analyst. His last employer was... She paused, letting the tension build. Hartley Chemical. The same company at the center of this supposed theft. Marcus Morales discovered financial irregularities in a deal Hartley was making with Thorne & Associates. According to his personal notes I found in the archived files of his estate, he was planning to report those irregularities to the SEC. Elena stepped closer to the witness stand. You killed my parents to cover up your fraud 15 years ago. When their house caught fire, a fire that started in multiple locations simultaneously, according to the arson investigation that was quietly dropped, My parents died of smoke inhalation after being sedated with sleeping pills they never took. And tonight you tried to kill my father's future for the same reason. Because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you needed someone to blame. This is insane. Thorne shouted, his composure completely shattered. I've never. Mr. Thorne, I suggest you stop talking. Judge Sterling's voice was ice. Mr. Stiles, did your office have any of this information before today? Stiles looked genuinely shaken. No, Your Honor. We had no knowledge of. I've compiled everything into a formal complaint, Elena said, pulling out a bound document. 15 years of financial records, fire investigation reports, and evidence of systematic embezzlement. I'm filing this simultaneously with the SEC, the State Attorney General, and the FBI. Because my father isn't the criminal in this courtroom, Mr. Thorne. You are. Judge Sterling banged his gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Thorne, don't leave the building. The U.S. Marshals are going to want to talk to you. Mr. Stiles, I expect a full review of your case against Mr. Miller. Miss Miller. Elena turned to face the judge. That was extraordinary work. Genuinely extraordinary. 3 weeks later, Courtroom 7B hosted a very different proceeding. The charges against Samuel Miller had been dropped. Not dismissed, totally dropped with prejudice, meaning they could never be filed again. Warren Stiles had issued a formal apology, admitting that his office had been provided with misleading evidence by parties with ulterior motives. Julian Thorne and Camille Vance were both under indictment. The SEC had seized their assets, and the FBI had opened a comprehensive investigation into not just the embezzlement but also the deaths of Marcus and Sophia Morales. It turned out that Elena's research had cracked open a case that fire investigators had suspected was arson but could never prove, until a teenage girl with a personal stake and unlimited determination connected all the pieces. Now, Judge Sterling looked down at Elena and Sam with something that might have been pride. Mr. Miller, on behalf of this court, I want to apologize for the miscarriage of justice you experienced. The system failed you, and for that, we are profoundly sorry. Sam, wearing his own clothes for the first time in weeks, simply nodded. His hand gripped Elena's tightly. Miss Miller, Sterling continued, I've been a judge for 30 years. I've seen thousands of attorneys, prosecutors, defense lawyers, corporate counsel. Most of them are competent. Many are very good. A few are brilliant. He paused. You, at 15 years old, demonstrated a level of legal acumen, investigative skill, and courtroom presence that would be exceptional at any age. What you did was historic. Elena felt tears threatening but blinked them back. Thank you, Your Honor. But I just did what anyone would do for their family. No, Sterling said gently. You did what very few people could do, even with all the resources in the world. You proved that justice isn't about money or power or connections. It's about truth and courage and refusing to accept injustice. He pulled out an envelope. I've taken the liberty of contacting several institutions on your behalf. Harvard Law School has offered you a full scholarship, to be held until you graduate high school and turn 18. Yale and Columbia have made similar offers. Stanford has invited you to join a special program for exceptional students. Elena's eyes widened. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fighting for people like your father. People who don't have a voice. People the system overlooks. Sterling smiled. The law needs people like you, Miss Miller. People who actually care about justice. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Camera flashes, shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. But Sam and Elena pushed through together, father and daughter, hero and savior. How does it feel to be free, Mr. Miller? Are you angry about what happened? Elena, what's next for you? Elena stopped on the courthouse steps and turned to face the crowd. Sam stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. What's next is my father and I are going home, Elena said clearly. We're going to have dinner together, probably pizza, because neither of us can cook, and we're going to watch terrible reality TV and just be normal for a while. Because that's what was taken from us, normal. The chance to just be a family. But what about your legal career? A reporter called out. Elena smiled. I'm 15. I have time. Right now, I'm just happy that justice won. That truth won. That a janitor and his daughter proved you don't need money or power to fight back against people who think they're untouchable. She looked directly into the nearest camera. To anyone watching who's ever felt powerless, who's ever been told they don't matter because of where they come from or how much money they have, you matter. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And if you fight for it, really fight for it, justice is possible. Sam pulled her into a hug, and the cameras captured it, a father and daughter who'd been through hell and come out the other side together. Elena Miller stood in the law library at Thorne and Associates, now under new management and renamed Hartley and Associates in honor of the company they'd once betrayed. She was there legally this time, hired as a summer research assistant by the firm's new CEO, who'd been so impressed by her work that he'd offer her a job on the spot. Sam had been offered a position as well, head of facilities management, with a 200% pay increase and full benefits. He'd accepted, though he still kept his old janitor's cart in his office as a reminder of where he'd come from. The case had made national news. The janitor's daughter had become shorthand for underdog legal victories. Elena had been interviewed on 60 Minutes, featured in Time magazine, and invited to speak at law schools across the country. But her favorite moment came quietly, in the afternoon sun streaming through the library windows. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, approached her hesitantly. She was there with her mother, a new paralegal at the firm. Are you Elena Miller? The girl asked. I am. You're my hero. My mom says you proved that anyone can stand up for what's right, no matter how old they are. Elena knelt down to the girl's eye level. Your mom's right. But you know what the secret is. What? You have to believe you can make a difference. Even when everyone tells you you can't, even when it seems impossible, you have to believe. Can you do that? The girl nodded solemnly. I can try. That's all any of us can do. Try. And never ever give up. As the girl and her mother left, Sam appeared in the doorway. You ready to go home, kiddo? Yeah, Dad. I'm ready. They walked out together through the gold-plated halls that had once represented everything they couldn't have. Now those halls were just a place they worked, nothing more, nothing less. Because Elena had learned the most important lesson of all. Justice isn't found in fancy offices or expensive suits. It's not about power or money or influence. It's about ordinary people, janitors and their daughters, firefighters who become fathers, children who become advocates, standing up and refusing to back down when everything tells them to give up. It's about the truth. And the courage to speak it. As they stepped out into the New York sunshine, Elena looked up at her father, the man who'd pulled her from the flames twice now, once literally and once by raising her to be someone who would fight back. I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. I love you too. And somewhere in the city, in courtrooms and conference rooms, in law schools and legal aid clinics, Elena Miller's story was inspiring a new generation of advocates. People who believed that justice was possible. People who refused to accept that power always wins. People who understood that sometimes, the most powerful person in the courtroom isn't the one with the most money or the biggest firm or the fanciest degree. Sometimes it's just a 15-year-old girl in a thrifted blazer who loves her father enough to take on the world. The Yendi. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in justice again, or if it reminded you that courage doesn't have an age requirement, drop a comment below. Share a time when someone underestimated you, and you proved them wrong. Your story might inspire someone else to stand up and fight for what's right.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, do subscribe to our channel because your support keeps the team going, and stick with us because we have many more where this came from. More intriguing and more amazing stories as you can ever imagine. So do check it out and enjoy.